Hi, and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about ancient books, like philosophy most of the time, old works of art, plays, Greeks, Romans, countrymen.
Italians.
Lend me your ears. There's, some Italians in there, and probably some British guys. Yeah. My name is Graham.
Oh my God.
What was that?
Oh my God.
Keep it going. This is incredible.
It's been a while, boys.
We've been doing this for 8 years.
It's been a while, but we've been sick. We haven't
Y'all
recorded
have
in a little
been
bit.
sick, yeah.
AJ is going to be hacking through this whole thing. There it is.
Right there. Do you want more cough drops? You have more in front of
I
you.
don't know if I had like 9 of them.
Let's try 9 more. I don't
My
know.
name is Graham Donaldson, and I'm joined by Hacky McGee, AJ Hannenberg over
me.
here,
AJ Hackenberg.
AJ Hackenberg, and Thomas Magby.
Hello.
And we are going to be looking for a brightly colored fish today because it's lost at sea,
for sure.
and we need to find it. It's a delightful children's book, or children's movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a delightful children's
dare you.
movie
Yeah.
about an intrepid young, well, I guess it's the
Convict.
dad
Just the
looking
dad.
for his
Yeah,
child.
for sure.
And his child, what happened, got flushed or something? It's been a long time since I've seen the movie.
I don't remember.
But he ends up in like an aquarium, and there's seagulls.
Are you going to spoil the whole
crabs.
movie?
Yeah, there's crabs in it, and then they find each other at the end.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. There's some sharks, aren't there?
There's definitely some
sharks,
sharks.
yeah, for
Friends,
sure.
not food, and so we're gonna be talking
gonna get
about
sued for Disney.
We're gonna go well find
For
Disney.
describing the plot of
For
a movie?
describing the plot of-
of
Cool.
Finding
Awesome.
Meno. So here we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Great. So
Oh my gosh. This is not
If people
real.
are wondering
you-
why we haven't had an episode in a couple
only been
weeks, it's
2 weeks,
because
right?
AJ got pneumonia.
I've had. I'm just saying pneumonia is maybe overselling it. I've had what I think is a mild to moderate case of walking pneumonia. So it's like when they listened to my lungs, there was not a whole lot of wheezing, but I wasn't getting better. I was 2 weeks in, and I was like up and down, and it was this whole thing.
How am I not going to get sick from this?
Because I just finished, I finally went to the doctor, and I just finished my Z-Pack antibiotics.
Very nervous about this. I'm glad you're getting better.
And then I was feeling like I was coming down with it, but then I didn't get it.
Yeah, we had one of the teachers in our school who also got it, our compatriot, and she was in the hospital for, like a week, week and a half.
There's been something going around. So if you're wondering why we haven't been recording, it's because of that.
It's because I've been ill. We really do value you guys, and we're sorry we haven't been able to get together. I would love to blame a little bit of my forgetfulness this morning on, you know what, why don't I? I had pneumonia, and this morning I prepared for the episode, and in my rush out the door, I forgot to grab the book. So there's a couple of times when I will, where I would have read quotes, but couldn't hack it today. So I'm sorry, forgot the book.
No,
Still
you're
have
doing a
my
great
notes.
job hacking it. Like that's
All
the
right,
problem.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All right, Weezer, let's go.
So that was my confession time.
Yeah.
Whoa.
All right. So Meno. Meno is one of Plato's dialogues. We have done a few episodes on these before. We have done, if I remember correctly, the first 3, thanks to Mr. Thomas Magby over here.
First 3 what?
Of Plato's dialogues?
That was definitely
They're in
Graham.
order?
What? Wait. Say
When you say the first 3, what are they?
So there's Euthyphro, there's Apology, and then Crito, I think is the
Crito.
next one.
which those were all.
Oh, those are my
Those are all
episodes.
Graham's.
Oh, they're yours?
But I
definitely
mean,
Graham.
those aren't like in any specific order. Those are, they're...
Well, a couple of them are, because
yeah,
it's Socrates walking into
Sure.
the...
We're starting our fighting really early.
Yeah,
I
all
want to
right,
get to the
whatever.
content. What is?
Keep going.
Yeah, okay, very clearly, a couple of those are actually in order.
No, but you said the first 3. It's like, how do we know that? Oh, whatever. Doesn't matter.
We're off to a great start.
Roaring start.
Yeah, incredible.
Okay, so...
We've done 3 dialogues thanks to Graham.
So
They were
we've
very
done
good episodes.
Euthyphro,
Yes.
which is Socrates walking into the judge's house,
Yeah.
and then we've done Apology, which is where Socrates defends himself. And then what's Crito?
Crito's in jail where his buddy's like, hey, man, you should just
Let's
leave.
get you outta here.
And Socrates is like, I will do no injustice to the city. And
Yes.
Crito's like, ugh.
So Meno is a standalone. It does not actually hang with that other little narrative. It's its own little deal, and it's clearly before Socrates was put to death, because Socrates is a character in it, and he's not at the courthouse. So this is sort of its own standalone little thing. I say it's 4th because in the book that I'm currently doing with the parents here at Veritas, it is the 4th dialogue, and I promised all the parents that I would do an episode for each of the dialogues they were working on.
That's nice.
So this is number 4. So Meno. Luckily, there's not a whole lot of question about what this dialogue is about, because really it pounces on it with the exact, the first line. And I quote it. It's, "Can you tell me, Socrates, whether virtue is acquired by teaching or by practice, or if neither by teaching nor by practice, then whether it comes to man by nature or in what other way? So it just like lays the groundwork for the entire thing right there at the beginning. This is the question we're going to answer: is can you get virtue? Can it be taught, or is it by practice? Or if it's not one of those, then is it natural, or do we get it some other way?
Awesome. I'm excited. Can virtue be taught?
Yeah, can virtue be taught? Right now, before we get into it, like I think Donaldson, you've read this one before, yes?
Yes, but it's been a long time. All I remember is like we're going to be drawing in the sand. We're going to be drawing squares in the sand at some point.
At some point,
Yeah,
yes.
that's all I remember.
What are your guys' opinions right now as to whether or not virtue can be actually taught?
It has to be, right? Like, what's the point of education if the answer is no? So there must be some way that a person has developed and grown, and so yeah, it has to be able to be taught.
Well, the line says...
But could you like take a kid and say, I'm a teacher of virtue, sign your kid up for my classes, I will have them virtuous by the end of the year? Or
more virtuous.
Yeah.
I think you do it, but you don't do it by going at the virtue. You make them study a really hard topic or work on something difficult, and they will develop the virtue through that. So
it's by practice.
So it's not taught.
But it's taught.
Teaching or by practice. In this case, it's by practice.
So teaching has to be spoken? What are my...
Like, could you say, here is the virtue, here is what you do, now go and do it, youngster? And
You could do that, but yeah.
So it's much more effective, like, as a father, to make your kid do the thing that would give the virtue.
Teach it, yeah. But, I mean, am I annoying if I start off by saying it's both? Because I will both have to, like, verbally correct my son and then give him practice to, like, to go forward from there.
Okay,
So,
that's fine.
Going to be both.
I'm just trying to get a basic groundwork here.
Yeah, you need the like theory, which is the teaching, and
Okay.
then you need the
Then what do you do differently?
the embodiment of the lesson, which is the practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Did we just answer it?
we'll get there.
No.
We'll get there.
Well,
I'd love to hear your guys' opinions when we're
Well,
actually
Graham,
done.
did you give an answer?
That was it. It was it is both. It's
is-
that you need the theory, and then you need the like embodiment of the lesson.
Okay, so you guys both say both. Great. Socrates responds by saying, I don't even know what virtue is, so I can't even really tell you
Off
if
to the
it's
races.
acquired by teaching or by practice because I literally can't find anyone who will tell me what it is, and I don't know what it is myself. And so if you're looking for what virtue is, like, I definitely can't answer you. I don't know anyone who can. And Meno says, like, Socrates, did you know this guy named Georgius? He used to teach this stuff. He had an idea, and Socrates is like, I feel like I met him once, but would you please enlighten me as to what virtue is, Mr. Meno? And if you can't give Georgius's, if you don't remember, tell me your definition. And if you can tell me what the essence of virtue is, maybe we can figure out if it can be taught.
He does meet Gorgias.
In a different
There's a whole dialogue called Gorgias.
Oh, great.
I was preparing that one, but it was too long, so I'm doing something different.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Gorgias
Good to
is
know we'll
on
get
what
down to work for our
what
listeners.
is rhetoric.
Oh, really?
That's what
interesting.
the lesson is on that one.
I don't think that's one of the ones that's in the little book we're doing. I think it has the symposium.
It's because
and-
Gorgias is very long. It does
is
a
it?
number of things.
Okay. Well, interesting. So Meno gives his first definition. Now he's going to give a few definitions. I think I have 3 kind of outlined here.
Let's go.
As to what what is the actual?
I'm so sorry.
Can
we do anything for you?
At
This
this
is
point,
the best AJ we've had in like 2 weeks.
At this point, I'm actually feeling pretty strong.
Okay.
For a long time, I was like, I had, I just felt like I was running at 50% power. Like I was really exhausted all the time. I was coughing my brains out. Anyway,
That's tough.
right now I actually have some decent energy. So, could be the caffeine. So his first definition, this is Meno's first try as to what virtue is. And maybe I should ask this question too. Can you guys give me a definition of virtue? What is virtue? I feel like Donaldson, you might have it memorized.
Go for it, Graham.
Wisdom, justice, courage, temperance.
Those are examples.
What is...
That's not the essence of virtue. And that's great because that's exactly what Meno does.
Good.
Names
Yeah.
them.
The
Yeah.
telos of man, the thing that makes man happy.
So it's what you
Whatever makes
being
man
re-
happy is what virtue is?
are you
No.
like playing into my hands here?
No, I don't think so. I don't think
Do you not have the actual definition?
I don't have the actual definition. Yeah.
When you say the actual definition...
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Aristotle, right?
Yeah.
It's wasn't it like a something of
it's the function of man. The thing
no,
that-
I thought it was something falling between a mean,
Those are like,
it's the
like it's a
golden
habit
mean,
of action,
falling between the two extremes.
falling between the two extremes of too much and too little. Like there is a Aristotelian definition of this, and I
Sure.
feel like that
the
is a-
golden mean, I guess, is that's what it sounds like you're getting at, which is like a habit or an action that falls between two extremes of
it's like
something.
moral excellence, right? Like don't we need something more than just this like mean between things?
Yeah. Okay. I thought Donaldson would have a ready answer
Oh,
for this.
sorry.
one.
No, I don't have the answer. I don't know.
No,
what
that's
virtue
okay.
is.
It's not a criticism. I'm sorry.
Okay, virtue can't
but
be
now I
taught.
feel
So
real
Now
bad.
I feel bad because
Now
I
I feel
should
like
have
an
come with the
idiot.
definition.
Now I feel like
no, I feel
like
so bad. Now
we all
I've called
suck. Yeah,
I've called
okay.
you to the floor,
Yeah,
and
for
really
sure.
it's my own deficiency
Yeah, for
because
sure.
I should have come with the
I'm like
definitions
this
from
Cretan,
Aristotle.
I'm like, I can only communicate by bashing rocks together.
It's something I know. It's something I just know we've discussed it before, right? When
Okay.
we talked about the Nicomachean Ethics, right?
I'm
Doesn't it come up
I'm
there?
sure we did.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about this.
sure we
Anyway,
did.
so that's I just thought we would have it. I should have prepared that. That's on me. Okay, so Meno says the virtue of man is he should know how to administer the state, and in the administration of it to benefit his friends,
Hurt his enemies.
hurt his enemies,
Yeah.
and he must also be careful not to suffer harm himself. A woman's virtue, if you wish to know about that, may also be easily described. Her duty is to order her
Dang,
house
homie.
and keep what is indoors and obey her husband. Every age, every condition of life, young or old, male or female, bond or free, has a different virtue. There are virtues numberless and no lack of definitions of them, for virtue is relative to the actions and ages of each of us in all that we do. And the same may be said of vice. And Socrates is like, wow,
Man.
I ask for what virtue is. You give me a whole swarm. Awesome. Like numberless virtues. Fantastic.
Meno's going to get flamed in the comments.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, well, it doesn't really go very well for him.
no.
So Socrates points out, he's like, okay, you're talking about like a whole bunch of examples of things. Sure. Like bees. Like there's all kinds of different bees, like a whole swarm. But I want to know what is common to the bees. Can you tell me, like you've given me some examples. You still haven't given
me
me
the form.
the essence of it, right? The form of it. So,
The eidos.
yeah, and you say virtue changes with man or woman or child is the same of strength or health, or are those the same? Isn't virtue kind of the same as that? And Meno's like, I think it's different. Like Meno doesn't seem to be very sure of any of the stuff he says. And Socrates points out that neither the state nor the house can be ordered without temperance and without justice. So all men must do good in some of the same ways, right? So if I'm ordering the state or ordering my house, both of those need justice and temperance.
And it's not just a man thing and a woman thing. Because
It's not
they're
just a man thing and a woman
They're
thing.
both participating in this thing.
Yes, they both have some common thread
Temperance,
of virtue running
yeah.
through them, right? So he's like, okay, so again, what is virtue? So Meno goes for definition number 2, and he goes, okay, fine. Virtue is the power of governing mankind. Okay, so your thoughts on this? Is that a good definition of virtue? The power to govern mankind.
No, because you can use that power for good or bad. Like that doesn't seem like a.
Okay, great,
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have like a moral valence. I don't know why that would be good.
sure.
Yeah, that would be what I say too. Is that yes? It doesn't have
Like power more so than.
Exactly. It doesn't have the moral valence.
Yeah.
I mean, Socrates is wanting the form of virtue. He wants to be able to have. Don't just give me examples. Give me the thing that I can have that I can recognize it in the wild and be able to say that is virtue because of this reason.
Yes.
Because of this form.
Exactly right. He also points out that, like, look, if it's the power of governing mankind, there's a lot of people that doesn't really work for, like children, right? You said there was a virtue to every age and every form of being, but this one doesn't work for kids. It doesn't work for slaves. Doesn't work for any of those people. So presumably, like, either they don't have virtue or we're not really actually talking about virtue, right? So something is a little bit screwy, right? Meno names, so he's like, okay, again, I'm going to ask you, like, you've given me a thing, it's not really working. So what are the virtues? And Meno names a few. He says courage, temperance, wisdom, magnanimity, and there are many others. And Socrates is like, yes, I hear you, but what is common to them all? And Meno is confused about what he's asking. He's like, I've just given you a whole bunch of virtues. And Socrates is like, all right, look, man. For example, if we're talking about color, I've said, tell me what color is. And you've said, like,
Orange.
blue or orange, or in this case, whiteness. And he's like, that's not what color actually is. Or for example, shape. If I say, tell me what a shape is, or then you give me a circle, really that's an example of a shape, but that's not shapeness itself, because there's also squares, and there's also orange, and there's also blue,
Socrates
and
is
all
so
of those
annoying.
things.
I don't, man.
I know.
Yeah.
Someone should kill that guy.
Oh my gosh.
And so he gives these examples, and Meno kind of goes down a rabbit hole, or a rabbit trail, or a
Bunny trail.
bunny
Bunny
trail,
trail.
or a
rat hole.
pigeonhole.
Pigeonhole.
Anyway, he goes down.
That's a reference to our
Sorry,
AMA.
that's a reference
Like
to the
most,
AMA.
most people listening
So,
have no idea what you're talking about.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So Meno kind of takes the bait and he says, okay, so what exactly is shape? What is that? And Socrates trolls him a little bit and he's like, well, it's the thing that when you're describing something comes right after you tell its color.
Okay,
Guy's like,
that's good.
all right, Socrates,
good.
like that doesn't. And he's like, I challenge you to find someone who could like prove that untrue.
Yeah.
And so Meno's like, all right, well, give me the actual form of it. Like, tell me what you mean when you mean shape instead of just when people talk about it. And Socrates is like, fine, I will give you an example.
No, I don't want an example.
Or not an example, but I will tell you the essence of it. So can you guys give me like the definition? What is the essence of shape?
I have no idea.
Can you tell me what a shape is?
It would be the boundaries of an object in space.
Point Donaldson.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Socrates says it is where a solid ends. It is the limits of a solid.
Nice.
Like a solid plane. And Meno's like, great, okay.
I read a lot of Plato, so
Apparently, yeah, seriously.
So you've told me that. Meno's like, then what's a color, Socrates? So what's a color, boys?
The let me think. The particular light of an shape.
Okay, pretty good. I think we've advanced a little in science since this era, and now we can say it's the single wavelength of light not absorbed by the shape itself that is reflected into our eyes that process that through like electronic stimuli, right? Okay. Through the cones and rods. Like we have a lot more to say about what exactly a color is. It's a wavelength of light. Although we don't like light acts weird, but we're still still working on that part, but we have a lot more to say. He says, and this is kind of great. Color is an effluence of existence. It's a thing put off by existence that enters certain passages in our body. So, to quote, an effluence of form commensurate with sight and palpable to sense. So for him, and weirdly enough, he's kind of not that far off. It's a thing that existence just sort of like exudes. It's like a secretion of things, and it enters one of the passageways in our body. Just like sound is an effluence of existence.
Because does sound or smell, does that fit his definition? Or did he say something? Okay, cool.
So sound comes off of things that exist, and it's goes particular passage in our bodies, our ears, right? Smell goes through the nose,
But
right?
Did he say this was his definition of color?
Yes. So color is the one that goes through the eyeball passages.
So you just pick which passage.
Right? Okay. And it's palpable to sense. And so he's like, that's what color is. And Meno's like, okay, all right, that makes sense. So Socrates says, all right, Meno, I have answered your questions about what shape and what color are. You still haven't answered mine about exactly what virtue is. So if you would please educate me, for I still do not know exactly what virtue is, and I would love to answer your question. So can you give me that essence one more time? So
is it going to be something comparable, like the effluence of actions that enter our souls?
No.
Oh.
No, it's another swing and a miss by Meno, if I'm honest.
Bummer.
The desire of things honorable and the power of attaining them. So wanting good things and then being able to get them.
I like this definition, but I like the attack will be then what's the good thing? Like how do you separate what the good end and the bad end is?
Or if honorable is just honor, he's going to say honor is what everybody praises, and that doesn't. People can praise bad things and honor you for bad things.
Okay, no points for either of you.
No. Bummer.
So Socrates says, so there are some who desire evil in this case, and some who desire good, right? Mm-hmm. So in your definition, right, if it's desiring honorable things, there must be some people who want bad things. And Meno's like, yeah. And he goes, so some want evil. And Meno says, yes. And he goes, do those people who want evil, do they think those evils are good, or do they know they are bad for them? Like the evils that these guys want. And he goes, well, maybe a little bit of both. Some people know they're good, some people know they're bad, and they all want the evils just the same. And Socrates is like, to possess them. They want these things to like have them and have them with them. And he goes, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, so do they want evils and know they are bad? So some suppose they are goods, and those who want the evils, they're hurt by these evils. So like the people who think they are goods are just mistaken, but the people who actually want the evil, they're hurt by them, yes? And Meno goes, yeah, well, presumably, yes. And Socrates says, and they thereby become miserable. Meno says, yes. And he's like, but nobody wants to be miserable, right? And he goes, well, yeah, nobody wants to be miserable.
So
that makes sense.
So nobody. So they are mistaken.
So he says,
Everybody's
so yes,
mistaken.
nobody actually wants the evils. At what everybody desires is good, right? So if that's virtue, literally everyone has it.
Yes.
Right? Everybody wants what is good. So it's not just the desire. Everybody has that. Thoughts so far?
Yeah, I mean, I get
get
it.
it.
Do you agree? I'm not sure.
Well, but so there's always Socrates makes this claim in Euthyphro as well, and every year there's a student that's like, "What about just like sociopaths that don't know, or people that just like don't want happiness? They actually really want to be miserable." And it's like I feel like those are the exceptions that prove the rule, right? So, generally speaking, people all operate under some sort of sense of wanting to be happy.
I was going to say, what about like addicts?
But they have a vision of happiness, or they've gotten to the point where they've like fried themselves so much that they're almost like they're the exceptions that prove the rule, that they've taken their bodies are chemically addicted to a thing that they know is killing them, but like they're slaves to it now.
But they really do desire the good, and the desire is to be off of it.
For example,
the original desire was to like have a good night,
or to
escape something evil.
to escape something evil. Exactly. So
Right,
it was still a movement towards a vision of happiness and goodness, even if it was mistaken, which is what Socrates is saying.
Yeah. So Socrates says, look, fine. If it's not the desire, right, then it must be the power of getting it, right? Maybe that's it. You said the desire and the power to get it, so it must be just the power. And Meno goes, absolutely, that's what it is. And Socrates says, is any mode of getting it okay?
I was going to say, yeah, we get the same problem of you can go about things in a bad way, right?
Exactly. Even if it's unjust or dishonest. And Meno goes, no, that's vice. Can't do that. And he goes, okay. So some part of your virtue must accompany your acquisition, right? So it's not just the acquisition. There has to be virtue kind of hooked onto it.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, all right. And without them, the mere acquisition wouldn't be virtue. Meno says, yes, absolutely. And he goes, so getting it a bad way is vice. So not getting it in a bad way, and even lacking those goods, those things you would have gotten, that would be virtue. And he goes, yes, I guess. And so he's like, okay, so then the getting of it doesn't matter, but it's whatever is accompanied by justice or honesty, and whatever is devoid of justice is vice. So that. And Meno goes, well, it can't be otherwise in my judgment, and that's a direct quote. So he's given that definition, and he's pointed out like how you get it really matters, and if you don't get it honestly, but so you don't have it, well, you don't have the good, and it's not desiring the good, but you're still virtuous, and so it definitely can't be that definition you've given. Socrates says it repletes our problem. Each of these is a part of virtue, still haven't given me the essence. And so now Socrates is confused. Anything done with a part of, he says, I'm confused. Anything done with a part of virtue is virtue, but I don't know the whole of virtue, and you only give me pieces. I'm confuzzled. And Meno is like, well, crap. Also, I'm confused. And then he goes on this little monologue I was going to read, but he basically says, nah, I get it. I get it when people talk about you and they say that
You're so annoying.
He's like, I heard rumors
Yeah.
that what you do is just confuse people and make them doubt themselves and make them doubt everything. And you're like a torpedo fish that stupefies its subject. And Socrates is like, man, they weren't kidding. I do that to them, but I also do it to myself. If a torpedo fish can stupefy himself, that's what's happening because I'm confused. I don't know what's going on.
I just pulled it up. Torpedo fish is actually in that monologue. Like that's the actual. I thought you were just like making up that phrase.
No, he says torpedo fish.
I just wanted to confirm that it's in there.
I assume that's what I mean by torpid. Like,
Oh, you think? Okay.
probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's
So
a torpedo fish?
I don't know. It sounds awesome.
It says the flat torpedo fish. That's what they call it. I don't know what that is.
I feel like this is worth a Google.
An electric ray. That's what comes up when I search for it.
Oh, okay.
The common torpedo is an electric ray. There you go.
So then they have a short exchange where Meno asks if it is even worth investigating into something that you don't know about. Because how is it even possible? If you get the thing, you don't even know that that's what you wanted because you don't know anything about it, and you don't know how to go about it. So it's almost impossible to try to get knowledge that you do not have or find out something about something you know nothing about. What are your thoughts on that? If I don't know about something, how do you inquire and know that you've actually got what you're looking for? Because you don't know anything about it.
This is Meno's paradox.
Okay? Yes.
The Meno's paradox is,
You talk to experts. Like you talk to people who do know.
but how do you know you get it? If you don't know it, then how do you know you have it when you get it if you didn't know it in the first place?
By a consensus of people who do know
So
it.
that's it. It's just a.
But what if they don't know it?
It's just a voting machine.
Kind of. Like, what is good taste? Like, you have people with good taste and they agree on
Well,
something.
there's objective beauty.
Who declares it objective? The people with taste, right? We're back to the same thing.
I don't know.
Or like, what is good practice in
Metaphysics.
education? You would like go to
The
skilled
form of beauty
teachers.
exists out there, and
Yeah.
we just remember
And
it.
who has access to
We
it?
remember the thing we've never known.
What is he
before.
doing right now? Is this,
I'm
is
giving
this,
you-
Is
this
this
is
the
what-
Meno
this
thing
happens
where we're
with
going
Meno.
to? Yeah.
Yeah. So Socrates.
Socrates is weird. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Weird.
I was going to say, from what I remember, his weird belief is that like we have embedded memories
Of
of
virtue?
everything, and teaching is just like uncovering it. And Socrates is like, let me prove it to you, and then he like teaches a kid how to do math.
The Pythagorean thing.
This.
Right? Yeah.
So he basically says there are prophets who say that we are essentially reincarnated. The human soul is immortal, which means that it's gone through several lifetimes before. And when we are in the real world, we are not actually discovering anything about anything. We are simply
Remembering it.
remembering knowledge that we already have. And that means that inquiry is worth it because we're just remembering stuff we already knew. It's not trying to get at something we have no knowledge of before. We already have the knowledge. It's just sort of like recovering it, right? And that way we can get out of Meno's paradox, which is you cannot inquire into something you don't know about.
But like people know about Sir Gawain. Like what? How does that? Or is this only for certain types of topics?
It must be.
Because like you've never read a book before, I can't have remembered that book, right?
Oh, you mean
Or
like
that book didn't exist in your past life or something.
Yes. What?
Or like if you were going to learn the news.
Yeah, you have to read it.
Yeah. So I think he's thinking more about like
Things that
Like
exist
first
in
principles,
nature or
like
something.
forms.
I think he's
Yeah.
thinking more about like first principles and forms and more axiomatic things, or the givenness of the human nature. So virtues.
And he would say, so then these things don't change over time either.
These things don't change over time. So, Plato maybe has this immortality of the soul and you're going back and remembering it. Later Christian philosophers, when they read Plato, they're like, wow, the soul's not immortal in the way that Plato thinks. But what maybe we can say when in Scripture, when it says man is made in God's image, this made in God's imageness is the thing that is, quote unquote, remembering when you're learning something new, is that the rational faculties of man is this thing. And so when you learn something, you're remembering what God knows, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
weird. I want
Yeah.
to talk more about
Oh,
this.
okay. Maybe that's an in-between thing.
But he's right. What happens is Socrates demonstrates this by calling over one of Meno's young slaves and then essentially teaching him math. He says, if we take this side and we double it, now we have how long? And the kid's like, 2, it's too long. And then he's like, okay, if we have a side like that and then we stretch it up, what will the area of the square be? And the kid's like, 2. And he's like, no. If like it's this many blocks, and the kid's like, oh, 4. And he's like, okay, if we double each side, what'll it be? And the kid's like, 8. And he's like, no. And then he kind of shows the kid and walks him through it. And then at the end of it, this little slave, who ostensibly has had no education, kind of knows how to calculate the area of something.
Okay.
And Socrates says, isn't that amazing? Did anyone teach him this? And Meno's like, no. And he goes,
Didn't
no.
Socrates teach him that?
And that's the thing. Is Socrates
What are we doing?
like
Is this
it's-
real?
When you read it, it is very clearly Socrates
just
teaching
taught him.
this kid through questions.
Yeah, for
it's like
sure.
it's like me saying, did you know that there's a pocket knife in my room? And you're like, no.
Whoa.
And I was like, did you know that if I open this drawer and you look inside, there's a pocket knife? And you're like, no.
I'm remembering that
You're
your pocket knife was
remembering that
there.
my pocket
Yeah.
knife is there. And so it's questions. But the conclusion of Socrates is nobody taught him this. There's no way he could know this unless he had been taught geometry. So he must be remembering it from a previous life. Therefore, soul is immortal. Therefore, we don't have to worry about your stupid paradox. We can inquire into all kinds of things because it's stuff we already know.
Which is, it's a janky argument, but isn't he more doing like showing that we get to truth because we have we have this dialectical faculties where we can answer questions, and when we answer questions, we can get to a place of knowing about something that we didn't know about before. So just by asking questions and eliminating wrong answers and getting to right answers that you can observe, you get to a true thing, which is you now have a formula for calculating area. And this is the Socrates rational method. He wants to ask questions to eliminate examples of virtue, to eliminate what isn't virtue, to get to a formula that you can then say, just like how you now know how to apply the area of a square, you now know how to apply virtue to a life. That's what he's trying to do with dialectic. But it works with math, but the question is, does it work with these kinds of things like virtue?
Yeah, and what I was thinking about when I was on the drive down here is how do we distinguish in our own minds between those two things, between the function of our logical faculties and memory? What's the difference?
And memory?
Yeah, well, we're
For the way
remembering
Socrates-
things, right? Mm-hmm. How would you delineate the difference? What is the actual difference in what's happening in your mind?
Isn't logic like I'm thinking through the thing versus memory is like logic is a present thing that I'm doing and memory is recalling a past thing?
Yeah, but in either way, I was just kind of like, in both instances, the answer will pop into your brain eventually. And
You're
I
saying-
think maybe it's that memory comes unbidden, but that's not always true. Sometimes it takes a
I can
prompt.
try.
But memory is from experience, right? Memory is a thing that you have experienced before.
Right.
Whereas logic is just like a faculty that it's like a program that you can run.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think they didn't necessarily have a category yet for that. Maybe that's what's going on. I mean, they talked about reason all the time, which is crazy that they don't make that connection. That like what is happening with this slave is the functioning of his rational faculties. That yes, even a slave can have those. It's like I think Plato even talks about it being a piece of all men, right? That they can all do this. They all have this faculty. It's not just memory. And he's clearly walking the kid through this. He doesn't just walk the kid up and say, "Tell me how to do a square," and the kid like gets it. So I don't know. I find this little bit pretty hard to swallow, and it's kind of a ridiculous little piece, I think.
But it's, yeah, I mean, but it does open up really those sort of profound questions about like, why does walking through a logical thing where Socrates is basically asking questions to eliminate wrong answers, how can it in like 2 pages get you to a pretty profound statement of truth about a square, but the same function cannot get you to profound statements of truth about virtue? Like Socrates never gets to the algorithm or the formula of virtue.
No, he does. It's not a great answer.
Yeah, but the thing is,
But the math answer is great.
but the math
Isn't that
answer
your
is a
point?
great
Yeah.
answer.
So
So
Yeah.
this is
This
it's,
works
it's
for certain
that
things.
big question of humanity is like, why is reason alone not enough to get you to answers about happiness and virtue?
So is this is Socrates' answer to, you call this Meno's paradox?
Yeah, which is, how do you know that you know something how do you know that the answer you get is what is true?
And the answer is, I remember it?
The answer is that you knew it before, and by asking questions, you're like uncovering it, and then the reason you know it's true is because your reason is telling you that it's true, and you remember it from before.
Yeah.
Not a great answer.
It's not a great answer, but
No.
if you separate the like reincarnation thing with that question about like believing that like when you come up to a statement of yes or a logical statement that when he says, hey, if you double the size of this line, how many boxes are there? And it's 2, like that is a true statement.
Yep.
If we have the capacity to make true statements and recognize truth in those statements, why does that function not be able to apply to everything in our life?
Sure.
That's sort of the
What's behind it?
what's behind it, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's like why does the tool that works on certain things of coming up with truth not work with all truth? Is truth in regards to virtue, or is the F of virtue like just a different kind of truth than the area?
Perhaps some that are not as self-evident. Like I'd say certain philosophical truths are easy, right? Is it good to steal your neighbor's stuff and then punch him in the neck? No, that's not good. That's an easy philosophical truth, right?
Or a
why?
positive, easy philosophical truth is people are motivated by a vision of happiness.
Yeah, sure. Those things are easy. Just like in math, certain things are easy to identify as like, yes, this is a clear truth. When you start getting into imaginary numbers and really high level math, it gets a little harder. And exercising your reasonable faculties doesn't make it as evident as quickly. That's why we have only a few math majors, So I'd say just like in philosophy, there's easy stuff that we can quickly recognize, and there's hard stuff. And in math, there's easy stuff and there's hard stuff. It's true. The same is true in logic, right? When I work with my students in logic, we have a number of logical operators when we do symbolic logic. You can actually eliminate most of those with complicated replacements and get down to only a few operators that
Like
can
De
do
Morgan?
most of logic.
Like you only need 2, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That stuff is more complicated and harder for ninth graders to kind of tackle, is how to get yourself from many logical operators down to essentially 2. But it can be done. And so I think it's just levels of
What are they?
complexity.
The 2 logical operators.
It's with your
Isn't it an if-then and
it's shown with
Conjuring something?
It's
What are
shown
you
with a
doing?
Venn diagram. So you need the one that has the overlap between the 2, and you need the one that has the not overlap between the 2.
Gotcha.
Those are the 2, and then you can get to everything else from there.
Gotcha. Okay.
I started waving my hands
Yeah, I
for
was
the
like,
for the podcast audience. So
so check us out on YouTube, everybody.
thanks. Good.
Okay. So we have the big demonstration of the slave. He proves, okay, soul is immortal. We can actually inquire into things we don't know about. And they're like, great. Thank heavens we solved that. Let's get back to the whole virtue thing.
Yep.
And Socrates, so they're like, can virtue be taught? And Socrates is like, fine. We don't know what virtue is.
Cool.
Let's talk about, and we're just going to leave that. And maybe like in science, we don't quite know what we're dealing with. We can do a small hypothesis, test it out, see if it works, and then we'll move on. So we're just going to ask, can virtue be taught? We're just going to tackle that without settling what virtue is. We're going to ask, is it a thing that can be taught?
Okay.
And Socrates is like, I'm not entirely comfortable with this, but this is what we're going to do. So he says, isn't only knowledge taught? The guy's like, yeah, that makes sense. So he says, okay, if virtue is knowledge, then
It can be taught.
it can be taught, right? So is virtue knowledge? He says, well, virtue is good, but it might be one of those, virtue is a good, but it might be one of those goods that's outside of knowledge, right? There's knowledge goods, and then there's other goods, maybe like health, right? Health would probably be a good that's outside of knowledge. But if knowledge embraces all good, right? If knowledge is over-encompassing, then virtue is a knowledge, and therefore it could be taught. So I put together a little syllogism. All virtue is good. If all virtue is good and all good is knowledge, then virtue is knowledge, right? And he says, okay, all good things are profitable, but health and wealth and beauty are good, but they can also harm us if we don't do it right, right? Too much wealth can get us in a bad situation. You can run too much and your hair falls out. Beauty can get you into trouble. So really, it needs to be under the guidance of prudence and wisdom.
Never got me into trouble.
Your beauty?
Yeah.
Might signal something.
Dang.
Sorry,
Wow.
feeling sassy today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sad Graham. Sorry.
Sad Graham. Sorry.
He's
You look
frowning.
great. I actually think you look good. I've never complimented. Have I ever complimented that
we
hat?
really doing
I
this
like
right
that
now?
hat.
What are we-
Yeah.
Cool.
I feel bad.
Awesome.
So my hat's beautiful.
What's-
All right.
So we're back to, we need to figure out what virtue is to decide whether it can be taught.
It's the health of the soul, right? Isn't that the...
So we'll get there. So he's like, the same is true of character traits. So virtue must be a sort of wisdom or prudence, and it's a wisdom, and wisdom is that which profits. So virtue is some sort of like wisdom or prudence about guiding how we do stuff, right? Because all those goods are there, but they all have to be kind of under wisdom, and it's wisdom that brings us good stuff. So if virtue is wisdom, then virtue must be taught. And the guy's like, great, we got it. If virtue is wisdom, virtue must be taught. And he goes, but what if we're wrong here? Wouldn't something that's taught have teachers and disciples? Like if virtue can be taught, there would be teachers and there would be people learning it. And he goes, I don't know any of those. I don't know anybody who's out there teaching virtue. Luckily, we've got our rich friend over here. Let's ask him. Awesome. Let's ask Anytus. So they go over to Anytus and they're like, hey man, do you know any teachers of virtue? We don't really know any. You've got the means to do it, right? So do you? And he's like, tell you what, those guys who claim they do it, I'd steer clear of them. All those sophists, like stay away from those guys. I hate those guys. They are a bunch of grifters and will take all your cash. So stay away from them. And Socrates is like, oh, well, have you like gone to them? And the guy's like, no, I wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole. And he's like, so you don't actually have any experience with these guys? And he's like, no, never will I. They're a bunch of swindlers. And he's like, so you're criticizing people you have no experience? It kind of goes back to that same knowledge thing again.
Yes.
And
Fun fact, Anytus is one of the guys that is a witness against Socrates in his trial. He's one of the guys that brings the court case against Socrates.
really? Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Socrates even tried to include him.
Yeah.
He's kind of a jerk to him right now, though. He's like undermining everything he says.
Yeah, a little
Like, for
bit.
no reason.
I guess that's true. And then he says, he asks him, okay, what about this famous virtuous guy? You know about him, right? And the guy's like, yeah, I know about him. And he's like, he had a couple sons, yeah. And he's like, he had great sons. They could ride horseback, they could throw spears, they were great wrestlers, they were like all good at all these things. And he's like, okay, but have you ever heard anybody say that they were virtuous, the same that their dad was? The guy's like, no, not really. They're really talented. They had a lot of like skills, but they weren't virtuous. And he's like, okay, fair. What about this other famous guy? He had great kids. He was really virtuous. He would have taught it himself if he could, and he also had enough money to have them taught virtue. And he probably wanted that. And the guy's like, yeah, that's probably true. He goes, okay, but
Why are his kids dirtbags?
yeah, why has no one ever said anything about those kids at all? And he's like, okay, fair point. So he goes, okay, there's no disciples, there's no teachers, virtue is not taught. Therefore, it can't be knowledge. And they're like, well, crap, we are to the same spot again. And he goes, okay, but perhaps there's another guide for action, like kind of like a wisdom, that is not strict knowledge. It's not the same thing.
So it can't be taught.
Can't be taught, but it still works.
Okay.
Do you guys have any guesses as to what it might be?
Graham probably knows.
I don't.
You referenced
It's, I don't know. You're born with it.
Close.
Oh.
He says it is true opinion.
it. What?
So differentiated from knowledge.
okay.
And that knowledge is like, okay,
It's like a faith.
almost yes. So if I say, I know that there's like a shop up in this other country or up in this other city where you can buy that same rug for $12 cheaper, right? I have been there. I have bought the rug. That is knowledge. I know, right? My buddy, who has never been up to that city, he just kind of knows the economic flow of things, and his opinion, his true opinion, is that there's going to be a shop up there where you can buy the rug for cheaper, right?
It's true because there's actually the rug store. Like,
There's actually a rug store. You can buy the rug.
Great question.
He is correct,
Okay.
right? But it is an opinion, right? He's never been there. He's never seen the rug shop. He's never bought the rug. He does not know this for sure.
Yeah.
It is a true opinion, though. That's how they are different. Both of those, would those end up in you buying a cheaper rug if you
Yes.
went to that place?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is one more valuable than the other?
That's tougher. Wouldn't you rather have firsthand knowledge of all these things? But
I mean, it wouldn't change what you like
the
getting the
outcome,
rug.
the outcome is the same.
The outcome is exactly the same.
Yeah.
And this is Socrates' point. He's like, I will give you that knowledge is better because it's anchored.
right.
True opinions tend to like flitter away because they're not anchored by any real actual experience.
Yeah.
But Socrates points out in the real thick of things, as far as telling you how to act in the world, they're the same.
They're the same.
It's exactly the same. And if virtue isn't knowledge, because it's certainly not taught, but it's wisdom, because it tells us how to act and how to, use all these goods and get the goods that are profitable to us, it must just be true opinion.
So how does a true opinion get to us? Who's our buddy that knows about the rug store?
So his thought is that it's very much like people who are divine, like the oracles, who just, you walk up and they tell you, this is what's going to happen in your life. You are going to do this. This is going to happen. This is where you're going to go. They don't know. They don't know for sure.
Right.
But they're true opinions, and they come to us from the divine. Now, their definition of the divine is very different than what ours was, but for them, much of the divine comes entirely unbidden from the skies, right? And true opinions are like this. They do not come from knowledge. They are not taught. They are just opinions. They kind
Poets, man, the poets.
Exactly. They come kind of from nowhere. And this is the thing that is our guide in the world. And so the people who are virtuous are like the divine because their virtues, their guide for their action comes as a gift from the gods. And therefore, virtue, no, cannot be taught. It does come by nature, but kind of like a divine nature. And that's why we say of virtuous people that they are divine.
Is this the same thing as Lewis's stable sentiments?
Explain.
It's not maybe something that you can come to with a logical syllogism. It's not something that you can teach, but it is a good thing in and of itself. And it's like when you see it in other people, you admire it. And it does have utility in that it does make you happier and it makes situations better, but you can't necessarily sort of teach it. They are true opinions about propriety.
So
Like
you would
manners.
say that stable sentiments cannot be taught.
I don't know. I don't want you to Socrates me.
But this is exactly what I want to do, is I want to find out how right he is. And this is why I asked earlier if virtue was a thing that could be taught.
I think Socrates is right.
Is it
in
a
this.
knowledge?
I
Is
think
it
he's
right?
no. I don't think so. I think he's right in this in saying that it is ultimately it's a thing you take on faith. It's
you
like
receive it.
it is the right opinion. It's like the humanity from its outset has said that the noble and gallant thing to do is to be virtuous in life. And if you're really wanting to get like modern with it and like really break it down to its logical thing, you're not going to get to a conclusion. But like,
Is that what teaching? I guess because we say whether it's can be taught or whether it's a practice. Does taught just mean I can talk? I speak about it, and that's how it's transmitted.
no, I don't think.
I think that's what
Really?
Socrates means.
Oh, because
But
like,
Because he
like-
differentiates between that and practice.
No, he means that in the way that what he's done with the slave with the math. That's what he means.
Oh,
teaching.
fair.
And you
So,
can't
like-
do that with virtue.
Yeah.
why not? Like you can talk people through their. We're doing this right now.
So I
right?
could teach you what virtue is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to follow that, maybe?
But I would have it in my mind the next time I'm faced with something. Like that would not be.
No. But think of if you were talking to a 15-year-old and you're showing them the square on the ground, like when you double it, they're gonna like the right answer is that
They'll
the
get
square
there.
has now been doubled.
Right.
But if you talk to a 15-year-old and you say the right thing to do is to be obedient to the authorities that you've been placed under, they're gonna say like, yeah, but these are all the exceptions when I'm not going to do that. And then if you say, but those are the wrong, that's not what you should be doing, they're going to say, says who?
But what's the difference with when you read Sir Gawain and you reach this conclusion about we try our best, but we don't reach perfection, but we're still doing our best, right? Like you have taught them a moral thing in that by talking through that book, which I know from talking to students, like has stuck with them, right? Like that story matters to them. It's something they return to, they think about in their lives as they come to situations. Didn't you teach them virtue?
I've taught them that the book holds that opinion, the true
That's
opinion.
not true.
Yes, it is.
No.
Well,
The
I
book is
also
true,
think
but
the
you
book
teach
is
it
true.
because the book is true.
The book is. The book is the book has the true opinion. The book does not give you the logical reason as to why it's right to do. It's just
But
giving you
taught
an
it.
example of
Yeah.
the rightness of
But you
it.
taught the book, which had the philosophical lesson, which sticks with the
So
student.
I've
So
not taught them
you're-
virtue.
you're-
I've taught them that Sir Gawain the Green Knight has a true opinion.
Okay. Which they either ascribe to or don't.
Yeah. I haven't taught them the eidos itself. I haven't taught them the form of virtue. I've showed them that this book has a true opinion about virtue.
So your opinion is that all virtues. So you agree with Socrates
I
here.
do agree with Socrates in this one. I don't think you can teach virtue. I think it's you at some point you need to sort of accept that this is the givenness of the world is that like you're not you can it's a difference between like being taught and being convinced. You can convince a student that this is right, but like when Socrates says teach it to me, he wants the form of things. And I don't think we can see the form of things until we see Christ.
So you disagree, and this is where I think maybe finally this episode is actually coming into play. Immanuel Kant's groundwork for the metaphysics of morals. The form of virtue is that I can will that anyone in my situation would do the exact same thing. That's it.
Maybe I don't know. I have to go. I don't have the faculty, the facility with Kant that you do. I'd have to think about it.
So his point is that like if I can't the what is it, the prime directive, he had some word
Isn't that
for
like
it.
not to interfere with alien
Yes,
races?
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
moral code.
Well, I mean, yes, there's that. But what was it called? He had some word for it. But his point is that the very form of
the
virtue,
categorical imperative.
categorical
Categorical.
imperative. There it is. Not the prime directive. I was so
That's
close.
incredible.
I was so close. Is that if I can will that every man should do the same
Yes.
in my situation?
People were screaming at their radios
make
right
it so.
then. Yeah, that's
That
okay.
is
Yes.
the if I can will that everyone should make it so, then that is the form of virtue.
Thanks.
And so your fact is, or your thought, like I think there is that. So we can have the form, and I actually kind of agree with Immanuel Kant on that. That if we're talking about what the form of virtue or at least moral conduct is, there's that. We also have the definition from Aristotle that I have Googled. That is, virtue is a mean or average between deficiency and excess. It's a state of character that allows a person to act well and do their own work well. And if Kant, were to weigh in on this, he would say, and will that everyone should do the same in that situation. I
You
think
can teach that.
Plato would add that it was profitable. This is a concept you can teach.
Yeah.
My But I think you would go further to say that I can show that to a kid.
Yeah.
I cannot convince him to do it. And the actual doing is the virtue. And I think Scripture would probably weigh in the same, right? People who hear the word versus doers of the word. I can have a kid hear this all day long. Doesn't mean he's actually going to do it.
You think virtue and salvation are the same? Like, that's interesting.
I think, and here's my postulate, is that I think I'm going to actually agree with what you said earlier. I think it is a combination of the two. Cool. I think there is a teaching element for exactly what virtue is. So, for example, hearing that Sir Gawain, like, yeah, he wasn't perfect, but gosh, he did pretty dang good. And there is an allowance for that.
And he loved it. He loved goodness.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
in the moral realm. Like, you can love goodness and screw up a little bit and still love goodness and not hate yourself for it. That is a moral concept that can be taught to students that is an advancement. Versus like, or even the example of do unto others as you would have done unto you is better than don't do to others what you don't want to do to you. Yeah. Right? That is a moral advancement, a different concept that is better. So in that sense, that can be taught. But I also believe it is imbued by practice. And this was your point. Like, I can give all that to a kid, but if he doesn't actually ever go through hardship or experience virtue delivering the profit that Plato said would come, or bring health or wealth or happiness or a better life, and that is what virtue should do to everyone who practices it, is that, I mean, even if your circumstances are bad, you should end a happy person, right? That is kind of where virtue ends it. There is a practice element. And I think that's why Socrates never saw any teachers of virtue, is that it's a two-step thing. I can give you the form of it. I can tell you what virtue is. I can like list some of the stable sentiments up on the board. But for a kid to actually work those into his own life takes practice. And this is what Aristotle said. He said it can be taught. And the way that we teach it is by making them do the thing in small ways before they have to do the thing in big ways. So give them little pieces of ways to be courageous, right? Before they have to go to war, make them go talk to a girl they're scared of, right? Or make them own up to something they did wrong. Because eventually they will have to be courageous in a much bigger situation. And having practice of doing that again and again and again will imbue in them the virtue that you want later. That's just really hard to do as a teacher. And a program to actually work that into a kid either looks like parenting, which is hard,
right,
or it looks like weird psychological manipulation.
But isn't this the whole classical education thing of like teaching virtue? Like, isn't that pretty core to the movement?
And that's the weird thing about it, is a lot of schools claim to do this. And I think one of the ways that we do it is by just being hard. Like, we have hard classes.
Yeah.
And that makes kids stick to it.
Virtue.
And it does in a way.
And it unearths problems that we had. Then we, as an institution, have to get into and deal with. And then if the school is smart, they're like making the kid own up to cheating or to whatever, and having to be brave and taking consequences. And
so I think the classical school is much better at the one half of this, which is the knowledge portion. We're really good at saying, here are the 7 virtues, here are the stable sentiments, I could maybe even throw some content there if I wanted to. I could give them Aristotle's definition of virtue. I can say, here is what the smarts, the greats, have said that virtue is, right? That's maybe the dialectic half. The mythos half is...
Ooh, do it.
I mean, this isn't a great example. Like, that's not really dialectic and mythos, but it's like the teaching versus the practice. Right. The practice half we are not as good at. And if rigor is the only way we do that, that's not great, right?
Or
I think
you would say that that's outside the school's responsibilities. Like, if parenting is your example, I don't want a teacher being the parent. I want the parent being the parent, right?
Yeah. But there are ways that we can, and it doesn't just have to be rigor. I'm sorry, this could become like a weird soapbox on classical education. But like, you can have dances where the girls and the guys should dance together, where you have slow couples dances. It's not a bad thing. It's a place to practice bravery. And point out that that's what the kid is maybe doing. Give them chances to do it. The more chances we give, the more real stakes we give the kids, the more virtue we actually teach. If we remove all of those stakes, as in get rid of the senior thesis program, there's no virtue taught, or at least it's only half the process. That's where after reading this, I kind of landed. I think Plato is wrong, that Socrates is wrong. That it's not just true opinion. Yes, it can be taught in form. It also has to be taught in practice, which is hard. And so you don't often see a whole lot of teachers that can do it.
Graham, I want you to tear it apart.
Yeah,
no,
tell me I'm wrong.
I'm good. I think that's great. I still posit that at some point the student needs to. I mean, they may be convinced of virtue by being forced to do it in little ways, and then they see it's good for them, is not the same thing as like they've been taught it, like they've been convinced by it. Maybe this is a distinction without a difference. But I think you're right. But I do think that for each and every individual person who is going to eventually be someone called virtuous, they have to sort of somehow fall in love with virtue itself, with the code, and the falling in love with the code is not done purely by like an analytical teaching, but it's like the same kind of way that you it's like a faith. It's like a
faith or a falling in love. Right?
It's like a falling in love. Like your mind is, of course, convinced of the rightness of this thing, but your will is also moved towards that thing, and you make the decision to go and do it. And so, like, to be good, you have to love good. You can't just like be taught what good is. So,
and I think pieces of that come from practicing it.
Yes,
like it's just I think part of growing up.
Yeah.
And knowing that that's there. And there are kids who can be taught it and have opportunities to practice it, and it never actually worms its way in.
And Milton says that this is, when you do that, when you know the good thing, but you add deeds to your knowledge answerable, you then carry the paradise within you. And that's sort of the end of Paradise Lost, is that you know the good and you practice virtue, and now you even though you're kicked out of the garden's still inside of you.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I fall on it.
Yeah, I feel much more comfortable saying virtue is something that is taught via both knowledge and practice, and it's hard and long and complicated.
Crap. Bees was right at the beginning.
Yeah,
You said the exact same thing.
Oh,
So we're
but I
both right.
disagree with you.
Cool.
Because
Awesome.
you had a true opinion.
How could it be otherwise? Yeah, good.
I feel much more comfortable saying that than I do saying it's just lucky true opinions given by the gods. Like that seems like a real cheapskate way out of it. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think it's the same thing.
Oh, interesting. Really?
Let's not get into it.
Let's do it in the in-between. I want to talk about that.
Well, this has been classical
yeah,
stuff.
seriously. Yeah, for real. Wrap it up so we can do the in-between. I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been classical stuff. You
that's
should
on you.
know.
close it. Do you want
My
me
name is
to?
Graham Donaldson. I need to
Are
get
you
my
taking
wits
a
about
nap? What
me.
are you doing?
I need to get my wits about me because apparently they're coming for me in the in-between. We do in-betweens, and if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can listen to Thomas and AJ gang up on me in
Yep.
the in-between.
Every time.
You can email us at theguys@classicalstuff.net. You can tweet at us, wherein I will once a quarter tweet back. And you can find us on Patreon, where we have monthly AMAs, in-between episodes, and other little goodies, and apparently like Hulk Hogan merchandise.
That's the thing you talked about. That was a good AMA.
That was a good AMA.
That was a good AMA. Thanks for the
So
question. everybody.
thanks for listening, and go practice virtue, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.